Hello everyone, it's his Score, Creative Director of Project SWG Scorekeeper, here with another development diary entry. Today I want to talk about player hubs. Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, this isn't Star Wars Galaxies, and you're right. This is Star Wars The Old Republic, and the reason why I'm here, actually, is because I started to think about the Star Wars Galaxies onboarding or new player experience. Basically, where do you go when you start, and what is it like? And so I thought, well, let's think about some other games as models and how they do it, and then try to go from there. Really, the goal is to see, is there anything that we can learn from them? Is there anything that's fun about them or interesting about them? And then apply, those learnings to our design of the Star Wars Galaxies experience. Now, where I'm at right now, this is the, oh boy, it's loud too. But, alright, so here I'm at the Imperial Fleet, which is basically just a space shuttle. It's a player hub, is what it is. And SWOTAR has done a pretty good job of making player hubs. The difference, though, in this game, of course, is that factions cannot really easily interact, right? So this is the Imperial Fleet, the Imperial Station, and then the Republic, they have their own. If you look at the map, it's just a big space station with everything kind of centralized, right? So the idea is, okay, this is a good player hub because it's going to bring players continuously back to this point, where then, in theory we can interact. I could try to group with these guys. I'm a noob, so I'm not going to, but in theory I could group up. There's a cantina here in the center. It's really not unlike the space station on Star Wars Galaxies, except for, of course, it's ramped up graphically, right? There's a lot more going on here, but in terms of function, right, you've got a cantina in the center. You have your various different, combat training, supplies, the marketplace, stronghold, and crew skills. You have the different things that I need as a player character in this point. And you know what? I could probably also ask questions here. I'm not really tracking the chat here, but if I really needed to, I'm sure I could ask for help and say, hey, I'm a noob. Please give me some help. Okay, so let's talk about how this relates to new character creations and player hubs in Star Wars Galaxies. In the NGE, typically that's going to be in Tatooine, Mos Eisley, right? So let's see if I can open a map here. Right, okay, so you start in Mos Eisley typically, and what that does is it sets a precedent for Mos Eisley to be the player hub, right? With the NGE, they rebalanced all of the planets and tried to scale the levels to make a linear path, making Tatooine the noob starter planet, with the rare exception of a Krat dragon that's out in the Dune Sea. But generally speaking, this is the new player planet. You start here, and you start a series of quests that take you on this very linear path. You go from Mos Eisley to Anchorhead, I believe, then, I don't know, maybe Mos Espa, Mos Entha. It basically takes you around every single city and POI, really, that are on the planet. So it's a roller coaster ride. You get on, you hold on, and it takes you places. The unfortunate part is it's pretty boring. You end up doing very simple, go kill 10 of this type of thug type quests, and then they scale it and make it harder by making it so sometimes the kill just doesn't count, so you got to do it again. So really that whole slog keeps you busy, and it also functions in a different way. It does introduce you to some mechanics. It helps you level up by granting you quest experience, so it's expedient in that way, and you get credits by doing it. And so you're leveling up, you're getting more skills. The unfortunate thing is, in some sense, early game, it's a necessity. You kind of have to do this if you want to get the money. There is at least one piece of gear that I can think of that is a necessity if you want to be a spy hunter. So there's things to do within it, but one of the things that it it did dramatically was solidify Tatooine Mos Eisley as the player hub. Now, usually what that means in the NGE is everyone is hanging out in the cantina. This is where you come to get your buffs. This is it. This is the reason. And so all of the other cantinas across the galaxy end up being quite vacant, and everyone ends up kind of choosing Mos Eisley just merely for convenience. So I think that's something that could probably change and probably should change. Mos Eisley also suffers from this problem of urbanization. So basically what happens, because this is the capital city of the galaxy, it's the Coruscant, what happens is a whole bunch of houses get placed over here, because if you're a merchant, a trader, you want to have a vendor and you want to make a profit, well, it's simply easy for people to kind of shop out of this area. I would think that, if you were to have a starter area, you'd actually want that to be something like Coruscant, or perhaps as we'll discuss later, maybe a space station that's really more of a proper neutral ground. So this is the NGE start. It makes Mos Eisley the capital city. I think that has huge ramifications that should be explored further. So in exploring that, I got to thinking about, well, what was the old capital city, or the player hub, or the nexus point that players went to? Was it always Mos Eisley? And in truth, it wasn't actually. During the pre-combat upgrade, or even during the combat upgrade, you actually had Coronet, a core planet in the center of the galaxy, as the main player hub. Now, as you can see, it's empty right now on this server that I'm testing on, but back in the day, there used to be, a whole crowd, hundreds of people would be standing here, and they'd be, shouting, selling wares, right? And they'd be yelling that, and there'd be buff lines for doctors, or they'd be directing you to the hospital over there. So this was a nifty kind of sprawling marketplace, much akin to what I think occurred in old RuneScape, right? And the reason for that was pretty interesting. It was, well, mainly because it was the galactic center. And this was also pre-jump to lightspeed, so you couldn't just go from Tatooine to Yavin. You couldn't just instant hyperspace to wherever you wanted to go. It used to be that you had to purchase a ticket, and so you'd have to purchase a ticket, and you'd have to go to that ticket vendor, and you'd hop that way. And because Corellia was in the center here, it just made logical sense for this to be the central gathering point. I think that it had an interesting type of position. And then you had kind of secondarily, you had Naboo and Tatooine, which had multiple jump points, which made them also have added value. And so they were also kind of some secondary sites to buff at. So returning back to this question around new player creation in Star Wars Galaxies and the subsequent player hub, I think back actually to another area that we have in the game, which is it's not a hub, it never was in the game, but it could be, and that would be the Tansari Point Station. It's a new player tutorial in the early game, or it's the same model later in the game as Nova Orion Station, and it's basically just a pilot theme park, but it's worth exploring. So you have kind of this open area where ships are at. You actually have two hangars right here. I think this could be beautified with some nice TIE fighters or Lambda shuttles or something in here. But you've got your landing ports, and then you have your outer ring, and you have some various rooms up here that it branches off to. But really in the center you have your cantina, right? So it's kind of the same functional layout as what we saw in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. But really what we're looking at here is optimizing and utilizing spaces in new intentional ways. When we compare this to the alternative models, which is probably one of two, right? It's either starting in Mos Eisley, or starting randomly out in the middle of nowhere, we can probably see that there's some potential for what we could do with a space like this. So, in conclusion, I really think that this is an opportunity for us as a development team to look at the new character experience and specifically where that places you and what that means for player hubs in the beginning of the game, the early phases, as well as how they develop later on down the line, hopefully into player cities and other areas. So it's a lot to chew on, but I think there's some good resources there that we can look at, and I think just with some small edits to what that path looks like, we can really create a unique and fun experience. So with that, that's all I have for today. Glory to the Scorekeeper.